Welcome to the Costume Plot.
I'm Jojo Siu.
And I'm Sarah Tim. We're professional designers with a passion for costume design and the performing arts. Our podcast does contain spoilers.
We hope you'll join us every other week as we delve into the wonderful world of costume design in the Costume Plot. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited because today is our first live theater production. So that's really exciting. It's the first time we've actually done a musical. So Sarah and I are really excited.
Yeah, it's really our more area of expertise more than film, which is funny that we haven't even gotten but I'm excited. I'm excited to do it finally. But real quick, before we jump in, a couple of things. I just want to remind people to please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts especially. We're doing a thing where we're going to donate $1 for every review we get. We haven't picked a charity yet, but we were just talking about how we have a couple in mind for maybe specifically like COVID relief for our industry. So that's exciting. And then also a little shout out to a podcast called The Podcast Review Show. They tweeted us yesterday, and they are a show that reviews other podcasts, and they reviewed us, which was just a delight.
No pressure.
I know. Immediately, I was like, uh-oh. But
is this going to be good or bad?
Yeah. They were very sweet and had nice thing to say about us, and it was just what a treat to be reviewed by another show. So thank you to them.
Yeah, definitely. We're very grateful for other listeners as well.
I know. Yeah, I think that's a good way to reach other people is for other shows to mention us, cross promotion kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So Jojo's starting us off today. What are you covering today, Jojo?
I'm going to be covering Meet Me in St. Louis, which we kind of mentioned a little bit last time. So if you guys are able to, it's actually still showing all online, and it is technically free. They try to get donations just to support the theater, of course. And their next showings are going to be February 11th and the 21st, which is very exciting. And it's Sarah and I were talking a little bit about this. We were really pleasantly surprised because, now that we are in the world of Zoom, there's a lot of productions out there who don't do a great job of figuring out how this medium works online. But I feel like this show did a really good job of kind of meeting that middle ground that we're sort of in right now of figuring out how to produce live theater in an online platform without it really being film, and how to honor, the techniques and things about live theater that we all love. So I'm going to cover most of the images that we actually got from this show were from the theater directly. It's a lot of their marketing and promotion images. So there are going to be a couple costumes that I will touch on and talk about that were not in the photos. So I apologize for those of you that didn't get a chance to see this production. But just be aware, a lot of it's going to be talking about kind of how we were able to get costumes in this modern age of no contact and no fittings in person. So just to give you a little bit of background, Meet Me in St. Louis was actually adapted. This version was adapted and directed by Charlotte Moore, who actually was in the original production of Meet Me in St. Louis on Broadway. And she's also the artistic director of Irish Repertory Theater. So she really comes in with a lot of insight for this particular production. The costumes, of course, are by Tracy Christensen, and she's done a lot of work on Broadway, but we were lucky enough to be able to actually interview with Tracy, which we don't have that recording today, but I got a lot of insight into just how her process was for this. And that's one of the things I'm super excited to talk about because, how do we do a Zoom costume design when we're all online and we can't do fittings in person, we can't take measurements in person, and even sending costumes can be a whole nother debacle or aspect of that. So found a lot of information from her. She was really, really open and willing to talk to us about just her process for this, which I'm really excited about.
Well, I wasn't there, but I'm really excited to hear what she told you.
Yes. So I wanted to start with a couple quotes from her just before I get into the costumes. one of the things she talked about with the director is that Charlotte really wanted to tell a really clean story. So I mentioned to Sarah, this is a show that I'm very familiar with because we actually did it when I was in high school, way back when. And it's a little bit longer than the actual production that they've given us online. But she definitely took out kind of the bigger filler parts and kind of gave us the bare necessities, essentially. So there is a little part at the very end that she kind of skips a big portion of the show, but she kind of gets the major plot points that get us to where we need to get at the end of the show. So she said she wanted to try and evoke the period anywhere we could. However, it's definitely modern. We're going to try and convey the character and what their objectives are. So she talked a lot about like the objectives in terms of their relationship with one another, in terms of, you know, who they liked, in terms of, and you'll see a lot of that in the pictures as well. She definitely kind of groups couples in a way with colors and patterns and textures and things like that. One of the things she talked about with the costume process, because I asked her a lot about what it meant to be the costume consultant on this as opposed to being listed as the costume designer. She definitely said, I was mostly dealing with what people had in their closets. You're working within the parameters of this Zoom thing. And she said, I have a fraction of the control I would normally exert as a costume designer, which, you know, that's one of the things as a costume designer, there's so much under our job description that's included in creating a design, putting it all together, and actually doing all the fittings. And I love that she kind of talked a little bit about that. You know, there was some lack of control, but it was sort of, she described it as like a puzzle that she had to sort of figure out how to make those pieces work together.
Yeah, it's just like a whole different skill set practically. Like it's a whole different job.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things she talked about being a consultant, she actually was brought in quite late to the process.
Really?
Because I think she said that there was possibly some sort of misunderstanding about whether or not they needed a costume designer, which happens a lot in our industry.
Yep.
And of course, they realized they needed a costume person to at least be controlling the language and the vocabulary that was being used. And so they brought her in. But she said she had about 10 days, I think, to put everything together. So it was a little crazy. But one thing she said, like, one of her actors, actually the girl who played Esther Smith, so kind of the main, one of the main leads, who's in love with the neighbor, John Truitt. She said she actually had no access to things when she came to New York because I guess she was in the midst of traveling or moving, so a lot of her stuff was packed up. So you can kind of see that a lot of her blouses that she wears, which I'll talk about in a second, are much more kind of in line with the style of the period than maybe some of the other characters. And I think that's partially because Tracy was actually able to shop for her and had some money to kind of purchase those items for her. Let's see, what else did I write down? She also mentioned, and I think this is a really important thing to bring up, is that the actors are suddenly in a position where they have to deal with all kinds of things that they don't normally deal with. So, like, because she can't be there and be fitting the costumes on them and be telling them what to wear and be telling them how to style their hair, a lot of this stuff they had to do on their own. So it wasn't just recording themselves on the screen. It was figuring out where they need to stand, figuring out how to make their costume look like continuous every single time they wear it, making sure that their hair is the same as the day before, even makeup and all of those things that they normally have a little bit more help on, or at least assistance on backstage. A lot of that burden was taken on themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that was one thing that she made mention of that I think is really important to take note of before we start talking about the costumes. So that being said, all of that was just to kind of help us understand this Zoom world and understand what's going on. When we actually get to the costumes, let me share my screen. The first image I have here, of course, is the first opening scene. So Meet Me in St. Louis is their opening number. And it's really where you kind of get to meet all of the characters and see all the characters. And it's the first introduction to all of them. And I really love that you can tell the sisters are kind of tied in with each other, specifically because she's put all of them in sort of a floral pattern. So we have Rose here on the left in the kind of more saturate blue. And then we've got Agnes in the light blue and Tootie in the yellow. I think the only thing that I was a little thrown off, again, because I think she had the chance to actually purchase these items for her, Esther, even though I think this costume fits her so well for this character and for this role, it felt a little bit in the beginning like she kind of didn't belong with the rest of the girls. But I can understand why Tracy decided to sort of group the other three girls in that kind of same color palette. And you certainly start seeing Rose transition a little bit more. She's definitely the most saturate in all of her colors throughout the show, as opposed to the other two girls who we see a lot less changes in terms of the actual outfits. One of the other things that I really wanted to take note of in this, and again, she mentioned that she tried to put in bits and pieces and hints of the period wherever she could. I feel like the mom really was the most successful in this particular way. Not just her outfit in terms of like the puff sleeves that were very reminiscent of this time period, but also her hair. So she's got kind of a Gibson hairstyle that was very popular at this time.
It's like turn of the century, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think it's like 1905, 1904 or 1905, I believe.
Yeah.
So I think that was really, really successful. And it was interesting also that she put the mom and the dad kind of in this kind of gray monochrome palette. And I think that was also very purposeful. And I think that was really successful because she kind of kept them in more neutral tones throughout the show. Whereas the daughters had a little bit more color vibrancy. Lon, I think, was in the beginning, I feel like he was probably the least strong for me. I don't think it was that he didn't necessarily fit, and part of this might also have had to do with the fact that this is what he had in his closet. And he, I feel like for men, it's a little less common for them to have like period items unless it's a suit jacket.
Yeah.
Or period looking items, I should say, because, once we get to like the 1940s, 1950s, most people are wearing very casual polos. And so this was probably like the closest. But I also feel like he kind of threw me out of the world the most out of everyone else.
Yeah.
And again, with the limitations and understanding Zoom and what's in your closet, all of this is, said with a grain of salt, of course. But I think in the beginning, I think he was the least successful for me. In terms of Katie, who you see in the background, she's our maid. I do love that the costume designer kind of kept her consistent throughout the whole show. Not that we ever lose who she is, because I think she's a pretty big character.
Yeah.
In the sense of like her personality is very clear. But I like that we kind of kept her in the one look, which would have been very probably common in that time period as well, to have the maid dressed in sort of a similar outfit or uniform each time. Okay, moving on to the next one. So this was their looks on the trolley. And in the actual show, it's interesting because Meet Me in St. Louis, again, I have a very personal connection to this show, so I know a lot more of the songs. But one of the things Tracy mentioned was that like most people who have seen this show only really remember Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas.
Yeah.
Because, it's a Christmas song. It's already well known by most people. But for me, the trolley song was actually the most memorable just because
it's my favorite.
Was such a big to-do in the original production that we did. So this is, again, where we have a lot more of the vibrancy. I pulled up this image, or I should say I kept this image that they sent me because I really love how she's put Rose and Warren in kind of very subtle matching tones to kind of tie them together. Just that small hint of the red bow tie for Warren. And he's in quite a lot of neutrals as well, but more kind of on the brown neutrals as opposed to the black and gray. Whereas, now that we see Lon here, he's back in kind of the gray traditional suit that would have been characteristic of that time as well. I do love that they put Rose in this red. I think at first when I saw it, I was a little thrown off because it was just the first thing that kind of drew my attention more than anything else on stage. But I can see, again, just how she's sort of tied in the characters together. And I think keeping Rose in more of those kind of vibrant, saturate colors. Whereas when you look at a lot of the colors for Esther, she's in a lot more pastels. There's a lot more ruffles. I think Rose is kind of the satirical character. In the sense that she's very sarcastic in everything that she says. She has a lot of attitude whenever she talks to Warren, and there's this constant, like, sexual tension and feud going on between them. And she's got a lot of lip, I think. But I love that that's been reflected in not just her character and her choices, but also in her closet. I'm not going to talk too much about this character just because, you know, she has a lot of extras that there were 2 actors that had to play kind of the everybody else roles.
Yeah.
And I think she did a good job of just giving them different enough looks that you didn't get confused with who they were.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, so this was a picture of Tootie. And
She's
you know,
cute.
it's funny because in the movie version as well as the original show, Tootie's sort of a weird child. Like, and I think this one, I love that they cast her as an Asian girl, but also I think she did a really good job of just the weirdness of Tootie, and I think yellow is also just a really nice color on Asian skin, so I don't have too much to add about this. But this is definitely her common dress.
She was so funny and cute.
Yes, definitely. And I think just the expression, I think she did a really great job as an actor, but also just in this kind of smocked look. I can see why she chose this particular dress out of this girl's closet, because you can see some of that sort of smocking that also would have been common of that time period. Like, this certainly doesn't look as period as some of the other outfits or tops, but you can see where the hint of that period comes in and why Tracy made that choice.
Yeah, gives you like a little flavor of period.
Yes, yeah. And it helps that her hair kind of helps support that as well. I mean, not just her hair, but the hair of everyone on the show. I think they did a really good job of being reminiscent of the time period.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so then John Truitt. So he's our, leading boy next door. And I think this was really, really successful. Again, going back to the idea of the gray suit that was so common at this time. I think the bow tie reads a little more contemporary, but I can see how it ties in with the colors of, the other characters on the trolley. Also, the hat is very much, kind of turn of the century, the straw boater that he's wearing. And I think that definitely adds kind of the final touch of making him look very in period. This particular suit obviously has a much more contemporary fit, but I think at that time, slim was also very popular and very attractive. So I think it works very well. So yeah. I think Tracy did a great job on this one.
Yeah, it's not glaringly modern,
Yes. Yeah, very true. And he certainly has a couple. I think he was one of the ones that actually had like the most suit jackets, which again, I don't know this actor, but he just seems like the kind of person who would just have that in his closet anyways. But I think in terms of choices, like it looks like Tracy had more choices to pull from in terms of his suit jackets.
Yeah.
So I think that was in her favor for sure. So just another quick look, closer up look at Anna Smith, the mom. Again, just the reminiscent sleeves. I think that's very, very period. I think her outfit in particular, even though it's obviously a modern turtleneck, definitely looks the most period in terms of things you can pull from your closet.
Yeah.
And then she also styled her hair very period. So I think this was one of the more successful looks that I think worked throughout the entire show. So back to Esther. This is only one of the shirts that she wears, but I love that this was kind of the styling that Tracy went for. A lot of her blouses are very similar to this. It's got a lot of that ruffle in the front. It's a very Edwardian silhouette. It's kind of the slightly higher collar as well, with a lot of the lace, and even the lantern sleeves is very common. She mentioned bows in a lot of her, the hints that she tried to put in for period. And I think she definitely did that with both Esther and Rose, the two sisters. You can tell that in this case, she's obviously put Esther in mostly pastels. Like, she's in this pink one. She's also in mostly white, I think, for a lot of the show. And then there's one other scene where she's in like a light blue. And it actually, I think it's... trying to remember if it's the scene that's with John when he's in like another gray suit, but they complement each other very well. It's a very cool tone gray suit. So again, you can see how Tracy's like kind of solidified those choices and been very careful to make sure that language stays there throughout the show. And then the final look for for Esther. This was actually one of my favorite looks for her. It's this beautiful, like, rich blue velvet kind of blazer coat, but it definitely kind of throws back to the Edwardian coats of that time, the very tailored look, and the very slender sleeves and shoulders. And then, you know, the polka dot is a little bit more on the contemporary side, but again, it's kind of throwing back to all of her other blouses, which have that kind of neck ruffle or neck tie that I think was very common, a common through line for all of her costumes. So yeah, I think that was the last one. Yep. So it was super short today, but I wanted to talk a lot about, I think, how successful I think these costumes were in the midst of having to choose something from someone's closet. I think the actors did a really great job. The singing was gorgeous, and I think whoever did the audio for this did a really great job. In light of the circumstances, like, there were a couple technological things where it felt like the actors weren't on the same plane, because sometimes actors would look bigger than others. But I think in terms of how they placed everyone into the shot, and also the fact that Tracy really, really, like, paid close attention to how not just one character looks and what they're pulling, but also how they look together on the screen. And how much more involved I think the costume designer or costume consultant had to be on this process in order to make sure that that was all staying consistent. I think that was a huge feat. So great job, Tracy. Thank you so much for sharing these costumes with us. I think it was a really good job in terms of selecting from what you have and working within those parameters, which that always makes it difficult, but it's also the fun part of figuring out that puzzle of how to make it work and still make it a memorable design.
Yeah, I think she did a great job, like, with like what she had to do, and clearly, like, there was a time crunch, so it's impressive under those circumstances too. Just like coordinating something like this. I mean, shout out to Irish Rep, because, like, I said this to you, but I was prepared to be, like, underwhelmed, and I actually was very pleasantly surprised, like, how cute it was and just, like, how fun it was to watch. And it was just a really cute little production.
Definitely. And it's, you know, because we aren't able to see real theater right now, it's nice to be able to have those little things that you're not like, I just want to leave halfway through the production, because there have been a few that I was like, why am I here? This is this is not what I signed up for. There was one thing that we don't have pictures of, unfortunately, but I did want to make mention of some of Warren's other suits. I just loved how well done the men's suits were. So specifically for John Truitt, of course, we have some pictures of, but there were some other suits I think that we don't have photos of that I want to just say it didn't do enough justice because we don't have pictures, but I think Tracy did a really good job. And again, some of that might have been just suits that they already had in their closets. But there was another one where Warren, who Rose's love interest, who is basically the one feuding with her the whole time and like won't ask her to marry him until it's too late. But there's another scene where he's wearing a Oxford suit, and it's a very specific Oxford uniform that's very characteristic of the university. It's kind of that blue blazer with sort of the Oxford insignia, and then it's like the red and blue striped necktie, which is so common. But I think she did a really good job of using that as a way to identify with him, because he is sort of the Oxford University man who's kind of I wouldn't say frat boy, but he sort of is like, you know, dragging Rose along a little bit until finally he admits that he's in love with her and wants her to marry him. But I love that she used that. And again, it was also in one of the scenes where I believe Rose is wearing a pretty saturate blue dress. So again, just really tying the two of them together, and the other couples too, Esther and John as well. There were multiple scenes where I felt like the color combination that she had them in, and seeing them on screen together, she did a really good job of paying close attention to how all of those characters unite with one another and combine with one another in their costumes.
Yeah, it's enough of a challenge to be like, hey, actor, like, what do you have in your closet that could be this? And then to even narrow it down to colors and group them by color and make them visually alike, that's a big challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Especially when you have actors who, because there are some actors who literally just are not color people, especially in New York. You'll get a lot of actors who just have a lot of monochromatic, black, white, and gray in their closet.
Yeah.
I mean, that was pretty much my closet before I moved out here. So it's an interesting challenge to think about trying to color coordinate when you have someone who doesn't even have that option. So yeah, I think she did a really great job.
Yeah. Great job, Tracy.
Yeah. Shout out to Tracy Christensen.
Woohoo.
So if you get a chance to watch this again, you have 2 more days. So I guess, what's today?
This will be going up the night of the 11th. So after that, they'll only have 1 more. But we'll put the link in the description so you can reserve your tickets to watch it. Yeah,
definitely. And support local theater.
Yeah.
Or I guess not local to us, but...
Well, they're local to
somewhere.
I'm sure we have listeners.
But yeah, so that's all I had to say. I mean, again, this is one of those shows where she had a huge feat because she had to cover an entire year. I mean, the entire show is supposed to last from July all the way to the following July. So trying to show that through costumes when you're limited already with what you can use in their closets. Again, brava. Very good job.
Brava, Tracy.
That's all I had to say.
Great job.
Thanks, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Now it's your turn.
It's my turn. Woo-hoo. So I'm covering Hamilton, and I picked it because it's on Disney Plus, and so I feel like people can access it pretty easily. That's going to be our challenge with picking theater productions is like, are we only going to pick ones that are out there on video that people can access, or in the future, are we going to actually go to live stuff? We'll see. We will see. It'll be,
or there's all the musical films too.
That's true. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of options out there.
I'm a big fan of professionally shot stage productions. I think that more should be released. Because it makes theater accessible to everybody and not just people who can afford a Broadway ticket.
Especially right now with COVID.
Especially right now. Yeah. Okay, so yes, Hamilton opened in 2015 on Broadway after being off Broadway for a few months, and it's directed by Thomas Kail and written by and starring Lin-Manuel Miranda. If you guys don't already know, if you've been living under a rock, the costumes are by Paul Tazwell, who he won a Tony for this. This show won a million Tonys, and he has a total of 6 nominations. He also did Memphis, In the Heights, The Color Purple, and The Wiz Live. Those are just a few of his credits. I will say, I looked at the rest of the production team for this, and it's a very male production team, which is sadly not that uncommon on Broadway, but hopefully...
Right.
It's hopefully at least
changing.
Yeah, it's at least not an all-white production team. Like, they have that going for them.
One step closer.
Yeah. So this is obviously the story of founding father Alexander Hamilton, but told through a very 21st century lens. It's like a hip hop musical. It's the language in it is very modern, so it's making a story from history accessible to 21st century audiences, which I think we've talked a lot about that kind of thing. And I think it's really important. I know that I didn't know anything about Alexander Hamilton before I got into this show.
Yeah, very true.
And I think I'm going to out myself as a Hamilton stan a little bit in this because I think that Hamilton's impact on theater really can't be overstated. I think it's perhaps the most important piece of theater, at least in my lifetime. I've never seen a show, a Broadway show, have such a big cultural impact as Hamilton has had.
In such a short amount of time, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2021, so it's been 6 years, and I think, even, before Broadway shut down, it was still, the biggest ticket on Broadway 5 years into its run. So it's made a really big impact, and I can see that even in, the shows that I've worked on, which is, a real push toward diversity and casting people who are not white, who are, in minority groups, and in regular everyday productions. I think it's really put diversity to the forefront of people's casting decisions, which is so exciting because it's proved that you don't have to cast a white person to play a historically white person,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan, obviously. So this first picture is from the opening number, and this is the whole company, basically. And everybody you can see has like a base costume of sort of this like beige parchment colored ensemble. And the leads you can see are in sort of like a white version of what they wear through the rest of the show. And then the ensemble are in what they wear through the whole show. So I'm going to talk about the ensemble a little bit because I think that their costumes are really interesting and well done. They stay in this like parchment color family, like I said. And so it makes them immediately like distinguished from the leads, which is important because the ensemble like kind of never leaves the stage. And they're often like moving scenery or moving props or becoming the scenery or the prop. So to have them so easily distinguishable from the rest of the cast, I think is important.
I think this was around the time when a lot of that was being done too, where like ensemble became a part of the world as opposed to just ensemble.
Yeah. I will say as a dance nerd, the choreography in this show is just impeccable, and it kind of like never stops. Like, there's hardly any break in between numbers because it's a sung through show. There's not a lot of dialogue in it. So like the ensemble is always dancing, which I live for, obviously.
Yep.
So the women are in sort of like, this takes place, 18th century, founding of America, 1776 was when it was founded. And it takes place before and after that.
It's okay, Sarah. I feel like my brain is still like, what?
They say the years like in multiple numbers, and I've forgotten all the years now that they say, even though I've listened to it a jillion times. The women are in these, they're in like an 18th century stay or corset, but they move so much that I looked up interviews with Paul Tazwell, and he said that, yes, they are fully boned, but they're not like doing the work that a corset would do. They're not like tight laced into them, which is good because you don't want to tight lace someone who's doing that much dancing.
Yeah.
And they have stretch panels in the side so that they have more free range of motion too. And I think this is a very common thing for people to do, which is like put people in underwear, basically. Like it's 18th century underwear, but now it's outerwear, which is it's a way to evoke the period, but do it in a way that's like I don't know, like cooler, I guess.
Well, we are seeing a lot more like undergarments being worn too.
Yeah,
on the outside, I mean.
Working women in the period would wear their stays as outerwear sometimes, but most women were not. This is a shot from an ensemble member's Instagram, Sabrina Miko. I like this because it's sort of like a backstage shot. You can see like it's made of like a lovely sort of taffeta. I really like this shot.
Oh, so beautiful.
The ensemble all have different pieces that they add to their base costume according to what scene it is. So like if they're at the ball, they have a skirt that they add. The men will add they add shirts later on. They have jackets for when they're in like the battle scenes. And then the women also have a vest that they'll put on that looks like the man's vest. Because the male ensemble members are in vests the whole time. And so the women have their own version of that for when they are basically playing men like in the battle scenes. So I
do love that. A very transformable uniform.
Yeah, very versatile. Like takes them from scene to scene without having to leave the stage for that long, because like I said, they're always on stage. This is a shot of a couple of them in little Spencer jackets that they add later on.
I did love those.
They're so
those were
cute.
Some of my favorite. Lovely
like surface decoration, but it's made of the fabric that the jacket is made of, which is common for across the board in this show. Paul Tazwell said that he basically stripped like all of the ornamentation off of these 18th century fashions, and we're left with like the silhouette. And so he plays a lot with like decoration that isn't like gaudy or sparkly or like too much,
Yeah. It's very subtle, but makes its statement.
Yeah. I also grabbed this because I want to say that this is like my least favorite line in the show, because Philip Hamilton is talking to these ladies and he's like flirting with them, and he says, "You look good in your frocks." And it bothers me every time because frock means dress and they're not wearing dresses.
Right. Oh, so funny. Lin-Manuel. It's the little things.
Why'd you write that?
Yeah.
Or, like, if I was Paul Tazwell, I'd be like, okay, well, the script says frocks, so they got to be wearing skirts for this part.
Right.
So that's that. And then this is a fun little behind-the-scenes shot I found of their corsets, and you can see the stretch panels in them, and you can see, the big honkin' zipper that goes up the back, that's very theater to just have, you know, there's no lacing, there's not like a bunch of tiny little hooks. It's a big zipper. It's got to be durable.
You got to get in and out of that thing fast.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so moving on to the rest of the people. This is Alexander Hamilton.
Lin-Manuel.
The man himself. This is his white outfit that he starts the show in. So like I said, like everybody has sort of like a white version of their costume, except Aaron Burr, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then he changes into this brown coat, and he puts it on stage, that happens a lot in this show because it's all sung through. Everybody's just like constantly moving to the next scene, which I don't want to say it stressed me out, but it
as someone who's had to do that a lot in the past, yes, it's very stressful.
Well, like every time someone's like, so they have to put it on stage, we're all like, oh God, oh no.
Yeah. How are we going to do that?
Because like for those who are not maybe seamstresses or in the theater industry, like a lot of times the inside of a theatrical garment does not look like the inside of a regular garment. The seams will often be very visible, and that makes it so that they're very easy to alter, which is important for theater because you're constantly reusing stuff, so you need to be able to alter it easily. So if he takes it puts it on stage, the seams can't be visible. So that means that it's like more work, which is impressive from like a construction standpoint.
Right. And that's when we do have to make it look kind of like a real garment, because you will see the inside of this.
Yeah. And I found out, actually, this is a good time to segue into a video I watched by Bernadette Banner, who is a very popular, like, costume YouTuber. She had sort of like a little interview with Paul Tazwell, and it was about also the Costume Industry Coalition, which is like a New York coalition to help keep the costume industry in New York afloat. And he said that the costumes are built by like several shops. So like Broadway shows are interesting because they don't have their own shop. They have to like outsource it to a bunch of different shops, and Tricorn Costumes is one of the shops that was responsible for Hamilton, and they like built a lot of it, and they said that everything is made to order. So it's like once they get a new cast member, they basically make a whole set of new costumes for them.
Wow.
I know.
That's insane. I mean, Broadway.
So it's like the work never stops. You know, like once the show's open, it's not just like we have the costumes we have. Once the show's open, you're constantly changing cast members. They have to have their own set of costumes. I found that very interesting because it's like, are you not altering the ones you have?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a lot of money, too.
I know.
I mean, that's why Broadway has money.
Yeah. Hamilton especially has money. They
for great. Sure. Their tickets are so expensive. Yeah. They better.
Yeah. Okay, so carrying on, I was going to say about this brown coat, it had a bit of like aging in it, and it's because like this is when he's young. He's an immigrant. He has nothing basically. So it's almost like a little bit droopy, this coat. So it makes sense that he's not established yet. It tells us that story. And then as the show goes on, he moves into green. Green becomes sort of like his signature color for like the majority of the middle of the show after the war, which I didn't pull pictures of the uniforms because I was like, they're uniforms. It's fine. I have enough other stuff to talk about.
But we've had that conversation a few times. Yeah. At some point, we'll probably have to cover a military uniform movie. So funny.
Not today. So, confirmed Slytherin, Alexander Hamilton has this lovely, like, bottle green color.
I do love that green.
It's nice, right?
It's such a rich color.
Like I said before, it's like the classic, it's the silhouette of the period, but stripped of like ornamentation, extra decoration, surface detail, just to give you like the feeling of the period as opposed to a carbon copy of it.
Right.
Which we like. I like that. And then he moves into black at the end of the show. And this is like a lovely velvet. And you can see that the style, I mean, yeah, you can, the green one, it goes, it's like a cutaway. So it's long. And then the black one sort of crops at the waist in the front and then has tails in the back, which is like an evolution of the period. So that's a way that they show that time is passing, is that the silhouettes changed a little bit. Lovely, beautiful.
It's almost like a little more reminiscent of the modern day tuxedo coat.
A little bit, yeah, because it has like a satiny lapel on it. And this is, I mean, it's called Regency, but I think in America, what did Bernadette Banner called it? Oh, Federalist. She called it Federalist era.
Oh, Federalist. Okay.
Yeah. Which is like Empire Waist, you know, the Jane Austen period we've been talking so much about lately, but like in America. Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about Aaron Burr. He is my favorite character. I have a lot of feelings, a lot of strong feelings about Aaron Burr. I love how, so I'm going to click back to that first shot. He is the only one not in all white. And it's because he's the narrator of the whole show. So he starts the show and you can immediately tell, you know, that he's different from everybody. He's not just a member of the company in this number. He's the narrator. He will be like pulling us through the whole narrative. I love this like eggplant purple.
Ugh. It's so nice on his skin tone too.
Leslie Odom Jr., this is like a tour de force performance. If you have not watched this, by the way, you need to. If you have Disney Plus, it's a must.
Yeah.
It's just very like rich looking without being like showy or tacky. It looks very luxe.
I love the shape of his unique lapels too.
This like button back.
That's just not something you ever see.
I wonder
very much a design choice.
Yeah. I wonder if Paul Tazwell found that somewhere in the research and was like, gotta do that lapel. Love that lapel.
Yeah, I'm curious because I was like, I don't think I've ever seen that specific shape. So I'm curious where he found that.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And then like the front kind of of the skirt kind of buttons back too. So you can see this like beautiful silky lining. And I love, he stays in purple and navy blue, and I like that they're very sort of like dark and stormy colors because he is this like tightly controlled like out exterior, but he has like all this rage like bubbling under the surface. He has this like internal turmoil. The whole show, and so like I like that kind of hints to his true nature, that he wears these like stormy colors. Oh, and then in this picture, this is his other look. Later on,
even that,
I know,
it's like the stacked lapel is so beautifully done,
gorgeous.
Because it's not just stacked; he's also like trimmed the stack.
Yeah, but it's very subdued trim. You know, like it's not. It's just quietly beautiful. It's not like in your face. And like I think I saw a quote from Paul Tazwell that was like, you know, successful costume design gets out of the way of the storytelling, which isn't to say that you should ignore it, you know, but it serves the story in a way that it doesn't pull you out. It doesn't like alter,
distract you.
Yeah, it doesn't alter your suspension of disbelief. So yeah, I think that's something he's done so well for this show. So this is our other men's. I forgot his name. John Lawrence.
I can't remember his name either.
John Lawrence. Lafayette and Hercules Mulligan. And I love sort of like the color scheme we have going here, and then the textures too, the velvets, and then like they each have a slightly different coat. So it shows their personality. Hercules Mulligan always wears like a knit beanie, which is fun. I heard a rumor that was because like the actor was wearing it in rehearsals and they just really liked it, so they kept it.
I will say, I think that beanie was actually one of the things that threw me out of the world.
Yeah.
Because I think no one else was wearing something like that, so it just felt so out of place for me. I was like, oh, this feels like an actor choice and not a design choice.
That's fair. That's very fair. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess it ties in with the hip hop
Yes.
But I think because no one else was wearing something like that, I felt very like thrown by his choice.
It's also, perhaps also they liked it because the other two actors who play the Lawrence and Lafayette tracks changed their hair for Act 2 to become their other characters because they're double cast. Right. And he has really short hair, so maybe they were like, we need a way for him to change his head too. For Act 2.
I could see that.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, I like that Lafayette is in velvet because later this actor also plays Jefferson, who wears velvet too. So it's like a fun little way to tie together the two characters he plays. Mm-hmm. So let's move on to the Schuyler sisters. Yes. Lovely.
I love this shot.
I know. This is the classic.
Yep.
So these gowns are interesting because, like I said, they're free of like the typical surface decoration that we see in 18th century fashion, and you're left with like just the silhouette. And I think that's fun. It's really effective. And they each have their own color that they follow through the whole show with, except for Peggy, who's only in 2 scenes. Sorry, Peggy. But Angelica and Eliza both have their own colors. And I like how Eliza is in like a cool tone, and she is sort of like a cooler head than Angelica is. Angelica's a little fierier, so I like that their colors reflect that. You would think, looking at these, that they are corseted, but I think what's actually happening is that the bodices themselves are really heavily boned. Mm-hmm. And Bernadette Banner said that too, and I trust her.
Yeah, you can see like the hint of a bone in the front of Angelica's bodice. I was going to say corset, but it's not a corset. But yeah, you can see like a very tiny hint of it, but it's very well disguised.
Yeah. That's pretty common, I think, instead of corseting someone to make the dress itself boned. That's what we have in our Christmas Carol at South Coast Rep. All of those bodices are really boned. So I think that's a good way to sort of give you the period silhouette without restricting your actor's range of motion, and it makes quick changes way easier.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it's just
minimizing the amount of extra layers to take on and off.
Yeah.
Is always helpful.
Yeah. And they definitely have sort of like the period kick out at the hip. The volume is really big, like horizontally at the hip, which is kind of probably achieved with like bum rolls. Mm-hmm. I would love to see, maybe it can be found out there on the internet, like a picture of them.
Like an understructure picture. Yeah.
So this is Angelica at the ball, and you can see like she still has her same colors, but it's just like a different dress, you know? Mm-hmm. And for the ball, they all have this style line that goes diagonally across the bodice that makes it look almost like it's a little jacket on top, but it's not. Mm-hmm. So these are the other two sisters, and Eliza's is like, actually looks like it's not just seamed together, it's laying on top of it. Yeah. To give it a little jackety feeling, and then Peggy's does too. So that's interesting. But I like...
Peggy's dress looks very Beauty and the Beast.
It does.
Picture.
Yeah.
It's very Belle. Like this is the dress she should have worn in the movie.
Oh, God. A lot... Maybe we should cover that movie at some point.
I was going to say, I was like, there were so many comments on that dress in the movie.
People have feelings about that dress.
Yep, absolutely.
People get real pressed about that dress. Yeah, so what do I have here? What's interesting that you might not know if you don't watch the show, if you only listen to it, is that the Schuyler sisters are on stage for a lot of numbers that they're not actually like, quote, in. They act as members of the ensemble, and lots of times they're on like the top level looking down at the action. So I think that's fun. Gives them more stage time. The Schuyler sisters and sort of all of the women in this show do something that is a pet peeve of mine, which is they pick up their skirts a lot. And you can see Peggy's doing it in this picture. It annoys me because their skirts are not touching the ground. They're like a good few inches off the ground. And I think that's for safety and because they're on a turntable.
Right.
So that means that they should be able to walk fine without picking up their skirts. But they do it so much that it almost seems like it was like an intentional choice.
Right. I wonder if that was an actor intentional choice versus like a director saying they need to look like they're busy doing something. You know, like sometimes you get that and it's like, what?
All three of them do it. And I think the ensemble women, when they're wearing their skirts, also do it. And so I'm like, why?
They've been built so you don't have to do that.
It's a note that I will give to actors. If I'm designing a show and the actor's picking up their skirt too much, I'm like, stop it. If it's dragging on the ground, you need to tell me that you can't walk in it. Otherwise, don't mess with it unless you're like going upstairs. But even then, sometimes you might not need to do it.
I do feel like sometimes that's a psychological thing, though. It's the fact that they aren't used to wearing so much skirt, and all of a sudden they have to think about, I can't see my feet, and where am I going to put my foot? And even though psychologically they know that it's not long enough to trip them, it's this fact that they have so much more volume than they've ever had to think about on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's a very real. I mean, I've had that with an actor before where it was horrible trying to deal with a skirt that was from the Victorian era because she just couldn't figure it out.
They're scared of tripping.
Right, yeah. Right, exactly.
And nobody wants to trip and fall on stage, so I understand that.
Yeah. But yes, I can understand why that would be a pet peeve for us.
It's a pet peeve.
So funny.
So then moving on, we see the passage of time in the women's silhouettes too. So this is Eliza's dress that she wears. She changes into it. Oh, around like the Reynolds pamphlet scene. And then when she sings Burn, she's wearing this, and then she wears it for the rest of the show. It's very pretty. I have a close-up shot right here of the smocking on it. Gorge.
Mm-hmm. So pretty.
It's like Swiss dot.
I do love a good smocking.
Mm-hmm. It looks almost nightgowny in Burn, but then when she's on stage in other scenes, it doesn't look too much like a nightgown. So it's like it's dual-purpose dress.
Yeah. Oh, and for those of you who don't know what smocking is, it's essentially a surface treatment that we put onto fabric, and it creates it's almost like running an elastic through the costume and kind of ruching the fabric a little bit so that it creates a really nice, I don't know how, I'm explaining this very horribly.
It's gathers, tightly concentrated gathers.
Right, exactly. And it's usually in several rows. So you'll see like a series of gathered rows.
And it's a historical technique. It's been around for a really long time. Nowadays, people do it with elastic, but, in the olden days, it was just with thread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of new techniques of smocking now.
Yeah. I've never actually done it, which is funny.
It just takes a lot of time if you're actually trying to do it the right way. So I get why people don't do it as often.
My dear friend Tessa did it for a shirt that was going on stage for SCR's production of Sweeney Todd, and she spent so long on it, and then it was covered with a jacket for most of the show, and we were all so sad.
Of course.
So sad.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many books about smocking that I've seen that I want to try, but then I'm like, who has the time to do this?
Not me.
Definitely not.
So yeah, Eliza adds this black police jacket on for Quiet Uptown, which is when her son is dead. So like everybody goes to black for that scene because it's very somber, obviously very sad. It'll make you cry. Makes me cry in the car. This is not a very high quality picture. Whoops. Oh well, but I like the sleeve.
Yeah.
That's why I pulled it. Oh, this is Angelica's sort of traveling outfit. I like it a lot. It's a little more complicated, it has more going on than her other outfits do. But I like I said, it shows you sort of like progression of the time period.
I feel like where we don't have surface decoration in this show, Paul Tazewell did a lot with the types of fabrics he chose.
Yes.
Because it still exudes like richness and wealth without having to be overly decorated.
Yes, I love his combination of fabrics and trim. And it's very monochrome, because all these characters have their own specific color that they kind of stay in. So that's its own challenge in itself to like make something interesting when it's all one color or like varying tones of the same color. I think it's beautiful. So this is King George.
My favorite.
This is the most historically accurate costume in the show because it is like a replica basically of like a portrait, I think. And Bernadette Banner said something that I thought was really insightful, which is that the fact that it's the only one that is so accurate it's like in itself a device, a storytelling device. Because it represents that he is like the old world, like strict, buttoned up Britain that these revolutionaries are escaping from. So I thought that was really a really good point, that it using his like strict historical accuracy can be in itself a storytelling device.
And then to completely poke fun at that.
Yeah. I mean, he's ridiculous.
It's so great. Like
he's ridiculous. I also think this is an interesting costume because that cape is probably very heavy and he's wearing so many layers and he has this big old crown on that his movement is quite restrictive. So the actor has to give a really big performance without really being big with his body. And that's one of the advantages of watching it on video as opposed to live, which is that you can see his face.
Yeah.
So it's a different experience from seeing it live. You know, I don't think that one is better than the other, but I think that it's nice to be able to see like Jonathan Groff's tiny little expressions that he does. He's so good.
Yes.
And his
definitely
spit.
not something I would have caught if I was actually in the audience,
right,
in a live performance.
I mean, the body language, because I'm lucky enough to have seen this show live twice. So the body language, you can see it. Like I saw it once pretty close, and then I saw it again pretty far back. So the body language you can read, but like the facial expressions are a lot less hard to see. I mean, a lot harder to see in person.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's also the only one in a powdered wig, which is notable too because most of them would have been in wigs, like especially like when they're in their office or whatever doing their
or deliberating,
right, in their cabinet meetings, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
that's another thing I wanted to say. That I love how there's like no wigs in this show except for this one. I don't know if Renee Elise Goldsberry is wearing a wig, but if she is, it's made to imitate like a natural style.
Right.
So that's another way that he makes the show look so modern is by the actors using their own hair, which is very unusual.
Especially when we have so many African American actors in this show. Like, they have the advantage of being able to style their hair in so many creative ways that I think lends itself to that hip-hop movement, too.
Yeah, definitely. Like, natural black hairstyles have for so long been suppressed, you know? Like, people see them as less professional or less elegant. Right. And I love that we're finally doing away with that nonsense and celebrating different textures of hair. Like, let's do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, is that all? I feel like that was a lot. I wrote in my notes.
It's a very big show.
It is a really big show, and I edited out some stuff. Like, I edited out Washington, even though he looks great, too. You know, everybody looks great. I could talk about all of them. I did write in my notes that I think that the simplicity of the period looks is smart because the stage is often so crowded that if everybody was in like super elaborate stuff like King George is in, your eye would be so overwhelmed. You would not know where to look. So I think that that's really effective. I already, when I watch this show, like every time I'm like, I don't know who to watch because there's always so much happening on stage. I love the choreography, but I want to watch the leads and they're singing and they're emoting. And then the turntable adds to it. So it's, it's just like
every element of this show.
It's spectacular. So I think that Paul Tazwell was smart, did a lot of smart design in this show. I think that's my thesis statement of this presentation. Very smart design.
Yeah, I think sometimes, people think that with costume designers, you have to go huge or really big. And I think sometimes simple can actually make just as much of a statement as someone or something that's a little more complicated.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think a lot more of the simple is actually sometimes, I don't want to say better, but like, but I've seen a lot of shows that I feel like the simple served much better than over surface decoration or just over the top exaggeration.
Yeah, sometimes less is more, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
In this show, definitely. So yeah, that's Hamilton.
Yay.
Please, I know that there are people in the world who haven't seen it, and I want to encourage them to watch it because
yes, definitely. I mean, I will say I didn't even get a chance to watch it until it went to Disney Plus. So like, I'm very, very grateful that they were able to get it onto that platform.
Me too.
Because like, I think it's like you said, it allows theater to be so much more accessible to people who can't normally access it, including artists that work in the field. Like,
right. Yeah.
Because like, we can't always, one, we don't always have the time to go and see a show, and two, we don't always have the money to afford a Broadway show.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah.
So yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's great that they did that.
I'm someone who is like not anti-bootleg either. Like a lot of people who are in theater are anti-bootleg, and I think that if a bootleg video is like the only way that like a kid in the Midwest can see your show, you shouldn't be anti that. Like, because like, don't you want people...
It's exposure.
Right. You want people who love it to be able to see it. And yes, it's probably about money, but like not everything is about money. People need to access art.
Well, and also for that kid who loves theater and literally has no other access to seeing a show, it's kind of like stifling that creativity for them to be able to pursue a career in that if they don't even know where to look for it.
Yeah.
Like, or know how to get into it, or, you know, any of that. I think it is all about education and access, I think.
And we don't want theater to become a rich person's art form. Like, that sucks.
It's so ironic to be, I think.
I know.
Maybe it's just because we aren't, I guess, considered established designers, even though we've been designing for a while. But, like, I think there can be a certain level of elitism that comes with theater that's only for the rich and wealthy.
Yep.
Whereas if you look at the arts and the history of the arts, like, it's meant for the everyman.
Everyone, yep.
You know, so, yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you on that.
Thank you.
I'm glad we're on the same page,
Me
Sarah.
too. I will say that I would have only seen Hamilton once if it weren't for my mom, who really wanted to go when she was here. We went in LA. And then the second time I saw it was in Orange County. And that was, I bought a season ticket to the Performing Arts Center, and it ended up being like $30 a show, which is so reasonable.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. And so
that's like unheard of.
I know. It was, and we saw a lot of other good shows too that year. So, and we were subscribers like up until the world shut down. So
right.
Look, if you guys
That's
are,
awesome,
you know,
though.
local, look at your local Performing Arts Center. They have really reasonable, you know, like weeknight tickets for tours, that kind of thing. Gold Star is great, you know. Find your cheap tickets.
So
it's
many
possible.
options and sources.
Exactly. I mean, once the world is back, obviously. So
right
now.
Well, and I get, again, I'm hoping that like this kind of exposes more people to the other ways that they can still see theater, including, you know, like online. Like Irish Rep has been doing a lot of these Zoom productions, which has been really great.
Yeah.
And, you know, as we get more and more Zoom productions, you know, a lot of theaters are, just to stay open, they're even, I mean, they have to offer it for free, but they're offering their productions online for free. So more and more people, I think, right now especially, have access to seeing more shows online in a legal way, as opposed to trying to bootleg it.
Right. I love what the National has been doing. They've been doing YouTube streams, and I've watched a couple of those, and they're spectacular. And like I haven't been to London since I was a teenager, like, so it's not like I can get over to the National to see what's on usually. So it's been really nice to see those. I hope more theaters keep doing stuff like that.
I think that's how I watched a production of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
With Benedict Cumberbatch. Oh my gosh, it was so good.
That was the one where they like, was that the one where they switched roles, where it was like the two actors played both and they would switch each performance? It's great.
I didn't see, I can't remember the name of the other actor, which I feel really horrible.
It's the guy
he's actually a pretty big name.
Elementary, right?
Yes.
Is it Johnny something?
I actually watched it where he was Frankenstein, or sorry, he was the monster, and then Benedict Cumberbatch was Frankenstein, which I heard was actually, I don't want to say that's the better version, but I heard that was the one to watch. So yeah, it was really good.
I watched their Jane Eyre, and I watched One Man, Two Governors, which was so funny.
Oh, interesting. I know Fullerton just did that show, so I've never actually seen it, but I heard it was funny.
It's really funny. His name is Johnny Lee Miller.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Johnny Lee Miller.
But we digress.
We got very distracted there at the end. But yeah, so that's our episode for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the coverage of live theater.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll be able to cover more in the future once we figure out how this format's going to work.
If you know of others that you want us to cover, please get in touch. I know there are a few, like there's like Newsies has like a professionally shot one that's on Disney Plus. There are a couple other big Broadway shows that have professionally shot versions we could watch, or we could look into more live streams, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We'll keep you guys posted.
We sure will.
For our next episode of this month, we're really excited. We're going to be getting our first guest artist as well. So we'll be bringing in Bronwyn Burton. She works at Fullerton, but she'll give a more detailed introduction once we meet her on the next episode.
Yeah.
But please join us for the next episode of this month. We're really excited to share other people's expertise with you all. And hopefully you guys also enjoy this episode.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
See you next time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Costume Plot. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Costume Plot. If you have a question, comment, or a movie suggestion, you can email us at thecostumplot@gmail.com.
Our theme music is by Jesse Tim, and our artwork is by Jojo. Please rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts.